Hey everyone, welcome to The Other Side of Addiction, where we dive into the depths of addiction, multifaceted and often misunderstood journey. My name is Al Richards. I am the host, and in this series, we'll navigate the labyrinth of experiences, stories, and insights surrounding addiction. My guest today is Michelle Ride, and the topic today is drug addiction through a mother's eyes, times four. Michelle, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be with us. And I'm just so grateful that our friend Whitney introduced us, and you and I have had a long chat. And I feel like I've known you for a long time already, even though really we've just met. So, again, just thank you for taking time out of your afternoon to spend it with us.
Oh, you're so welcome. It was nice to finally get to see you.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried to Zoom yesterday and it quite didn't work, but we've got it figured out today. So,
Yep.
you know, um, we had a chance just a little bit to talk through email before we actually did our phone conversation. And I just want to say thank you for sending me a copy of your book. So really, guys, today, even though the caption is drug addiction through a mother's eyes time four, Michelle wrote a book called AFLOAT. This is her story. Now, a lot of our listeners and quite a few of our guests have been on the show that have lost someone due to addiction. And that's exactly what's happened to Michelle and her family. Michelle, what got you to name the book Afloat? That's kind of a different name. And then of course the picture of the boat on there.
Well, after I decided to write a book about 6 months ago, I just happened to mention to my ghostwriter that I kind of felt like my life has always been, I felt like we're riding in a boat and I've got my 6 kids with me and we're just traveling along, enjoying the sunshine. And then all of a sudden, we started hitting some rapids and some really treacherous waters. And I started losing kids left and right, falling out of the boat. And I'd pull them back in and we'd continue on. And I just happened to mention it to my ghostwriter, and she thought Afloat would be the perfect name. And then I knew I wanted drug addiction through a mother's eyes because my story is through my eyes, how I viewed their addictions, what it did to my family, and how we coped with it. And times four. I have 6 children, and 4 of them are recovering drug addicts.
Wow. So you have a ton of experience really when it comes to this. And even though I say that, and correct me, feel free to correct me anytime that I'm wrong on this. Do you feel like you understand addiction fully yet? Even though you
Nope,
had okay, yeah.
nope. I kind of compare it. We've been in it for 20 years. Well, 20, really probably 25. And I think of what I knew then compared to what I know now, but now things are different than they were 25 years ago. And so I know no more today than I knew then, other than what worked, what didn't. And, but you have to love them. That's the main thing is I never stopped loving them.
Yeah. I've had a few phone conversations with people who have reached out to me who have had children that has battled addiction. And they've asked me a lot of questions on things. And again, this is just how my version of it is. It's a little different when it's your child compared to your spouse. Because this is your blood. I mean, you grew these individuals, you've raised
Mm-hmm.
these individuals, you've watched them through their ups and downs. It's a little hard, I think. I think it's a whole different ballpark when it's your child compared to a spouse. Because a spouse, I hung on for a lot of years with my she's my ex-wife now, so I hung on for a lot of years with her, hoping that things would change, and they did. They changed a couple times, and then somehow, some way, she'd find herself back in it. I think it's a little bit easier to wipe your hands or just say I'm done with a spouse, but when it's your child, how can you?
You can't. You can't. And me and my husband did not agree on discipline. He wanted to shove it under the carpet, pretend like life was great, but we live in a small town and everybody knew our kids and knew us. And I wanted to help others. I started a group called Panic, a nonprofit. We met twice a month. The biggest meeting I held was 1,500 people. But
Wow.
I brought guest speakers in, which had educated parents, grandmas, the addict. We had police officers, probation officers, SWAT team. I mean, judges. It something different every week. And so I was out there promoting and trying to get everybody together. And because I know it takes a village to raise a child, and I needed help. And so we didn't agree on discipline. So there came to a point where I had to pick my husband or my children. And obviously, I picked my children.
Yeah. Wow, I don't know if that is a tough decision. I mean, I think any mother would pick their child, right?
Yep,
I'm
yep,
pretty sure that's the direction it would go.
yep. I always knew that we were big people, and we would both leave the marriage and go on, and he'd be fine and I'd be fine. But my children didn't matter their ages. We started when my oldest was a senior in high school in 2000. So, I just knew that I had a bunch of little kids that really needed their mother, and we just decided to split and separate, and then we divorced later on.
Yeah. So question for you here, and you don't have to answer this if you don't want to. Do you feel like the kids that have battled with addiction, your kids, do you think it's because of something that's happened in their life, some kind of trauma or something that's maybe come about that? Because a lot of my guests, they've come on and they've gotten very vulnerable and they've shared some things that's happened to them as children, which was very traumatic for them, right? And then when they got to the age around puberty, it's always seems to be like around 11, 12, 13, 14 age where they start finally getting into the alcohol and maybe smoking pot and then getting into heavier stuff, or maybe they drank some alcohol and somebody gave them an oxycontin to help them with a headache or whatever it may be. Next thing that you know, they're on the streets and they're heroin users. Do you feel like that's happened with your kids, or if it was something? For me, like when I first started smoking pot, I don't think there was any kind of trauma really in my life other than growing up with a father who was very rough and strict with me. I
Yeah,
think I did it just because it was fun. You know?
yeah. I A couple of my kids were ADD or ADHD.
Mhm.
Nobody really knew much about it when they were young. And so we were putting them on Ritalin and we were doing all the things that the doctor told us to do. And I think there came a time when my oldest, he got an injury from a uh, football game. And so then he started on some pain pills. And I really truly believe that my kids self-medicated because they didn't like the Ritalin, they didn't like what the doctors had them on, but they wanted their behavior altered. And so I think my eldest started. I don't want to blame him, but he's kind of the one that started it, just alcohol, and then before we knew it, it was pot, and then. But our school had a real big epidemic with it into 1999, and he was a junior, and I really think it just started, and I think all the kids started doing it, and it just ran like wildfire. Then the next son come along, and I think he watched his brother, and I think he just did followed suit, and I they were all born real close together. The four kids were born in 3 years, and so they were all going to school together, had the same friends. And I think it just took one of them to start it, and I think they just followed their brothers.
Wow.
And I was born with an alcoholic. My dad was an alcoholic, so I grew up with an alcoholic, um, a very abusive alcoholic. Um, and every night he came home from work and was drunk by the time he got home, and really, really, really abusive to my brothers. Not as much to us three sisters. Very abusive to our mom, and I couldn't understand why she stayed with him. She just would he'd promised her the world, and then the next day he'd get up and start over again. And so I had a very abusive home childhood, and I really believe it runs in the genes. I knew my kids would have a chance of struggling, and I let them know early on that they could never take that one drink or that one drug or that one pill. But they didn't listen to me, obviously. And then once it got started, we couldn't stop it. It was, with four of them doing it, it was more than we could handle.
Yeah, I can imagine. And yeah, a lot of our guests have shared that, right? Where they grew up in homes where there was alcohol and drugs, partying all the time. And they ended up falling in the same trap. Even quite a few of them said, I told myself as I was growing up, I would not end up like them, and then I ended up like them.
Yeah.
Oh, and it takes a lot of strength. There are so many of them now that have broken that chain, right?
Yep.
Well, they have kids, and luckily they have kids that have never seen that part of them because they
Yeah.
to, and they actually have a chance. It's still probably in the genes, like you said, but they still
Yes.
have
Yep.
a chance where they
Well,
can down and speak with.
oh, and that my oldest grandson was 10 at the time, and he decided to look on Google and look up his dad's name. And one year my family, because of panic, the group I was doing, we were in the newspapers from Salt Lake to Spanish Fork. And so our story was out there. Our story's been told. You couldn't go to any newspaper. I mean, not any, but the newspapers we were in, and my story is out there. And he said, Grandma, you're never going to believe what I found. Did my dad really do da 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 da? And I knew right then I have to write my book. I'm writing my book. I wrote my book for my grandkids because they're going to know the stories. They're going to hear rumors. They're going to hear, but I want them to hear it from Grandma and the way I viewed it.
Wow, good for you, Michelle, for looking at it that way. Because yeah, I mean, the hearsay out there gets changed a lot, right? It gets all
Yeah. Yeah.
thrown in a bucket, and people just take
Yeah.
out whatever it is that they want to take out.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. So that is the reason I wrote the book. And I've got 12 grandkids and 25 step grandkids. And I want my grandkids to know that, that they can't ever even start. They can't even, they can't even touch it. Then there was my two little ones that never did do anything. They've never touched any drug. They've never drank. They've never done any of that. And people say, what do you contribute that to? And I said, they made a decision long ago. They made a decision to never ever, because they lived what I lived. And it kind of ruined their lives. They couldn't have birthday parties because nobody would allow their friends to come to the house because we had addicts running around and SWAT team might come. And it was torture on my two little ones. So they've stayed clean. They've never, but they love their brothers more than anything in the world and would do anything for them. But they don't like what they do and
Right.
what they did.
So they're in long-term recovery now, correct?
My kids,
Yes.
yes, yes, I've got one. I have twins, and one twin got out of it, and he's got a great job. Never looked back. The other twin, a year ago, was living with me. Come and stayed 4 or 5 days. Lost his job, his home, lost everything. Got a DUI, and then now he's just completed. Next month he will graduate from drug court. So for 1 year he's been classes, drug tests, never had a dirty UA. So it can be done. It,
Yeah.
but you have to want it. Then my oldest is doing great. He works and he's raising his boy, who is now almost 18. And then I've got one that's still struggling.
Wow. Man, that is a lot. I mean, I tip my hat off to you to
Oh,
I struggled with a wife, that's just one individual, and I mean, I ended up becoming addicted to her addiction. It took me down such a dark place. I can't imagine as a parent to have four of your
yep.
children battle with addiction. My
Yeah.
gosh.
Well, and if one wasn't, one did it, and then two did it, and then three did it, and then pretty soon four, and then they were on the streets together, and they were, in jail together. And I mean, one day I visited all three of them, and I would I in my book I explain what the jail's like, because majority of the parents have never been in jail. And so I explain what it's like to be in the county jail, and what it's like walking down that long, stinky hall, picking up that phone and looking down through a glass window and visiting for 12 minutes. And so I went to walk out of the jail, and I turned around, and I know it's impossible, but I think my Heavenly Father knew that I needed some hope and some strength. And I turned around, and I could see all three of my sons looking out their windows in their little pods, and they were all in different pods. And I've had so many miracles take place that really just kept me going, knowing that, they may not all be together, but they know they're in the same jail, and they know they're all safe and being taken care of and warm and being fed. And then I'd cry all the way home.
Yeah. Well, and even as a mom, you know that they're somewhat safe, right? They're not
Yep.
out on the streets, you know where
Yeah.
they're at.
Jail is not a bad place. I know a lot of people think it is, and I've just never really thought. I've never been in jail, so I don't know, but I don't think it's a bad place. I think if you're living in the street and you're not eating, and you're in danger and other people are in danger, I think the best thing you can do is be in jail, because you're safe, and you're going to get off the crap, whatever you're doing, long enough to hopefully see a little ray of sunshine.
Yeah.
But when we first started, they'd go to jail and I'd bail them out like every other parent. I was the world's biggest enabler. I didn't know anything else to do. My kids are my life. I'd die for any one of them. So when they'd go to jail, it would break my heart, and I'd think, okay, I'll just get them out, and I'll bet this time they do better. And then you get them out, and they just go right back to the same old stuff. So I got to where I couldn't keep bailing them out. And so they've all spent, I think the one that spent the most time, I think, is Travis or Troy. I changed their names in the book for their protection. So Troy, and I think he's been in the county jail 22 times.
Wow.
And still today hasn't figured it out. So I don't know, I don't know what it takes. But then, Joe is doing awesome. So you just don't know. But when it first started, my one son decided to rob a hostess store that was about a block from our house, and he pretended he had a gun and said, "I'm so sorry, but I need your money." And she had him $246, and so we bailed him out, because he wanted to get help, and so we got him into a rehab. I've spent more money on rehabs, and that is probably the biggest thing that I would tell people is, do not spend your money. Don't mortgage your house. Don't do any of that, because if they want to do it, they'll figure out a way. They will get the help they need. So I get him out of jail, take him to Salt Lake. We're going to put him in Highland Ridge, and I take him to Salt Lake the night before, and he takes my car. I'm down at the hot tub at the motel, and he takes my car and comes home, and he's just completely beaten. I mean, his clothes are shredded, and says, "What in the world happened to you?" And I was so mad, I wanted to call the police and have him arrested. And he said he was jogging and fell down. Well, truth to be known, he went to meet the dealer and told him he was his brother and didn't have money. And anyway, my kids have been in horrible, horrible situations. It's a miracle any of them are alive.
And that's exactly what happens, right? They get
Yep.
themselves in some really bad situations. And
Yep.
and I am a firm believer that God watches out for a lot of them for, I don't know. I don't know if he will continue or finally he lets them learn their own lessons or what, because there's so many close calls, all the time
Yes.
that my ex-wife drove intoxicated, how she did not kill someone
Yep. Yep.
herself.
Yep.
Times I kicked her out when she was so drunk she could barely stand, how the wrong person didn't come across her, grab her, throw her
Yeah.
in the vehicle, rape her, beat her.
Yep.
I mean, she has told me a few stories that I'm like, this is exactly how I put it. What the hell were you thinking?
What are you thinking? Yeah.
Seriously, right?
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but
But
when your mind's under the influence of something that doesn't get you to
yeah,
think,
yeah, they're not thinking.
they
And
put
we
themselves in
and
such
we come
bad.
to earth with our we come to earth, and we knew it was going to be hard, and we knew that we're going to be challenges, and but free agency is the only way that life could be. I mean, we have to be free to choose what we want to do, and my boys are free to choose, but it's just everybody else that picks up the leftovers, when it's done. But after he got home from that night still in my car, he went to bed, and I explain in my book that Satan was in the room that night. I was so afraid of my own son, my, the son that I born, raised, my very favorite son. And the kids all know, they say, he's your favorite. And I knew Satan was in the room that night. And I took my purse and my keys and my cell phone, and I put it between my legs, and I prayed and said, if he comes and tries to steal from me, I will fight him. He will have to fight to get my purse. And I woke up well, I didn't sleep all night. We got up the next morning, went to rehab, and he didn't stay. But anyway, I just thought, how can you be afraid of your child? The little blonde haired, blue eyed boy that you raised. But they have Satan in them, and they're not the same kids you raised. They're just not.
And the person that you raised is still in there, right? I
Yo,
mean,
he is. Yep.
they're there. It's just that they've been covered with a
Yep.
shell. It takes, and sometimes it doesn't happen,
Yep.
unfortunately.
Yep. Yep.
However, it takes a long time to break that complete shell
Yep.
away to where they're there again.
Yep. Well, and they have to want it. If they don't want it more than life itself, it'll never happen. All
Yeah.
the rehabs, all the jail stays, everything. What none of it'll ever help until they're ready to say, "I'm done." And my son that's just graduating from drug rehab, he says, drug court. He says, "Mom, how did I do what I did?" And I said, "It doesn't matter. Don't go back a year ago. Just live for today, and you're doing great, and you haven't had one dirty you ate, and I don't know how you did it." And he says, "Why don't you stop me?" I tried stopping you,
Yeah.
but you wouldn't listen to me. I did everything I could do, but you wouldn't stop. So each one of them have been different. Um, with four, I've never met a mother that has four drug addicts yet. I've met some that have two, and I've met some that might have three, but I've never ever met a mom that has four.
No, you're the first one that I've met that's
Yeah, no, it's not that common.
wow.
And I think the police officers, I know we look at police officers different. My sister has addicts, and they live in a different town, and her kids hate the cops. And my kids have always been treated very, very good by the cops. And they knew me, they knew their dad. And were they tough on them? Yes. Probation officers, tough on them. But we have never hated a cop. I admire what the probation judges, the jail people, what they've done for my kids. I will forever be grateful.
Wow. That's something I've not heard a lot of, really. Because I think there's still a lot of education that needs to be done. And
Oh
I'm
yeah.
Facts are blue, right?
Uh
I
huh.
I support our first responders 100%
Uh
because
huh.
I know if my family or I'm in trouble, I hope that they're there, right?
You're
Because
yep. Yep.
you need them, right? I mean,
Yep.
the ones who don't like them are the ones that cause the problems to cause more problems.
Yep.
That's just how I view it, right?
Yeah.
And however, I think there needs to be a little bit more education on it because I went to a neighborhood protest a couple summers ago. They This outfit was bringing in a sober living into a neighborhood in the city where I grew up in here in West Jordan, and the neighborhood was totally against it. And it was
Uh
going to
huh.
be a sober living for women. And there was people there that worked at AP&P. And I remember this lady standing next to me basically saying, I know what type of people come through here. And I mean, she was basically talking about them like they were all just a bunch of garbage.
Yeah.
And it's like these are individuals that someone loves, right? There's a
Mm-hmm.
mom or a dad or a husband or a wife or kids that love these individuals. And when they make it to sober living, that's a whole different, these are people who are working on getting their lives back on track,
Oh, yeah. Yep.
right? So they didn't even want to look at that. Matter of fact, one lady in the neighborhood, I went up and gave her a hug after the event. She got up and spoke, and she says, "You know what really ticks me off about hearing all you guys here?" Goes, "There's a sex offender that's 3 houses up from here. None of you are protesting that when we've got our grandkids and our little kids walking around here, but you're worried about people who are trying to get their lives back on
Nice
track
back to, yeah. Yep.
in the neighborhood." And
Yeah.
she said, "You all got your shit backwards." That's what she
Yep.
told them. And
Yeah.
good for her. And it was just like this 70-year-old lady that got up there and was talking about it. And, so it's, yeah, I think the
But I,
education needs to be there.
yeah, it needs to be, we need to be educated, because my first one that went to sober living, I about had a fit. I thought, he just got out of rehab, and I said, "You're going to put my son into a home with 8 men and expect any of them to stay clean?" I knew nothing about sober living, and I did not believe in it. Well, when I went up to visit him, it was in Salt Lake, and I went up there and he was happy as could be. And I, now I've had another one was in sober living just few months ago. And most of the men had just come out of prison, the nicest men that you have ever met. I'd pick them up, take them down to 7-Eleven, get them a drink. If they didn't have money, I'd buy it for them and then give them a ride back. And they were the most polite men you'd ever met. Well, they get out of jail, they get out of prison. And how do you expect them to move on? They have no family support normally. They have no car, they have no money, they have no job. You need to get out, go to work, and pay your fines. It's impossible.
Well, yeah, because
So
you can't
sober
find a
living,
job, right? Because of
yeah,
the
no,
because they don't expunge the records. Here in the United States, people's mistakes are held over their heads the rest of their life, basically.
hmm,
Where other countries, once you pay your time or your crime, it's wiped off.
yeah,
Not
yeah,
here. Because why? And again, this is my view of it. It's a money maker. So
yeah,
just keep them in the system because as long as we do, we're still making money. But we're
yep,
making
yep,
life so hard for that individual because what ends up happening, and you know this, Michelle, they go back to what they know, right? They go back to
yeah.
what's comfortable.
They go back to the only life they know,
Yeah.
the only life they can remember. They go back to the easy life. If mom can't come pick me up at the bus station when I get out of jail, then what do? You find somebody and they pick you up and you're right back in it again.
Yeah.
So that is my only complaint is I really, and then, sober livings are free if they can get out and get, the state pays the sober livings. So I am 100% for sober living. And I think if they don't do that, they're going to have a really hard time unless they go back and live at mom and dad's house. And then that's scary because then you're creating the same problem again. And sooner or later, it just has to end. It just can't keep going.
A little bit ago, you was saying to our listeners, don't put them through rehab, right? And flashbacks was happening in my head because the first 3 rehabs that my ex-wife went to, she basically did it because I was pushing her to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because again, we don't know,
Yeah.
have no clue
Yep.
because we think we're going to change them, right?
Oh,
We
yeah.
think that
Yep.
we can grab them by the hand like they're still 6 years old. Let
Yep.
let me take you to the restroom. Here,
Yep.
I help you. We're going to make everything okay. Not realizing they don't want to be there in the first place. And when they go 2 or 3 times or 4 times and they don't want to be there, they learn how to get through the system.
Oh,
And
yeah.
they know how to do it very, very well. They know how
Yep.
to do their time, make it look like that I've changed, everything's great. And my good friend Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director for the Other Side Academy downtown Salt Lake, he goes, it doesn't take 30, doesn't take 60, doesn't take 9 months. Hell, it doesn't even take 6 months for someone in recovery to get well,
Yeah. Yep.
right?
Yep. Yep.
And he knows this because he's lived a life, he's done it, and all the people that go through his facility. I mean, there are some that they finally start seeing the picture after 13, 14 months.
Yeah.
Of course, their brains are now starting to function right. You're
Yep.
starting to use the neurons and things like that. So, I mean, this is another pet peeve, and a lot of our listeners have heard me say this many times, is we're leaving the life of our loved ones in the hands of insurance company because they're the ones that decide how long someone stays in rehab when they don't know
Yes.
how.
Yeah. 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 They don't know.
And then plus again, like you said, if they don't want to be there, nothing's going to change.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's yeah, there has to be some changes. I mean, they're just something has to change. I don't know if I said if I've always said if I had a lot of money, I would build a rehab center because I think when you're ready to go through rehab and you're ready to do it. Now, my son that's graduating from drug court, I don't think he could have done rehab. I don't. Well, I shouldn't say, but he'd tried it so many times, and but this doing drug court, I don't know. I don't know if it was just accountability daily and then having to go to counselors and therapists and he just did well. So but I got one in probation right now that's running from the probation officer. So where does it end? It's crazy. It really is. But yes, in 23 years, I have learned a lot. Do I know everything? Nope. Because as soon as I learn something, then something changes. The drugs have changed a lot, and yeah, I have no answer. Somebody said the other day, why couldn't you put 10 things in the book that parents could tell their kids to stop them from ever using drugs? I said, if I could do that, I would be a billionaire. There
Yes.
are no 10 things you can tell anybody. You have to tell them what you want them to know and teach them what you want them to know about addiction, but they have to make their own choices. My two little ones could have very well chose to be addicts just like their brothers. They'd seen enough that they wanted a different life. And in the very back of my book, it's a chapter of where are we now, and I had each of the boys write where they're at now, and I had my two youngest, and it was so sweet. They just talked about how much they love their brothers more than anything in the world. They love them when they're clean, they love them when they're dirty, but they can't do it for them. All we can do is support them.
Yeah. Yeah, and you hit that right on the head. If you could come up with 10 things, you would be a
Oh,
billionaire,
I would be a
basically, right?
multi-billionaire.
Yeah,
Yep.
you'd be fixing problems all over the world
Yeah.
because
Yep.
it's just not here in the United States. I mean, I've interviewed people in Canada and the UK, and it's exactly the same. It's
Same. Yep.
exactly the same.
Well, and then the other question I get is, and they're not asking me what kind of a parent I was, because I think we all think we're great parents. But my kids were raised in a mom, dad, grandparents that lived close. We let them do every sport they wanted to do. We supported them in everything that they did. They were all high school graduates, seminary graduates, and Eagle Scouts. What more can I say? We supported them, we loved them, and they had a great, and my kids will be the first one to tell you, we had the best childhood. When we get together, that's all they talk about was what they did when they were little. And so I was a good mom. Why I was dealt this, I do not know, but I believe in heaven. I believe that Heavenly Father told me, you might get a son that struggles. And I probably said, well, if I'm going to have one, why don't you just send me four?
Right.
And I feel like that. I believe that, and I will till the day I die. I wouldn't trade my kids for nothing, but it has been tough. It's been tough. And writing the book was a whole nother, because would you want your whole life put out there for the whole world to read? I sure wouldn't.
Right.
So I had to jump through a lot of hoops trying to convince them that it doesn't matter whether you want me to write the book. I didn't choose for you guys to do the things to me you did and have the life that we had. So you don't really have a lot of say. I'm going to write the book. It's whether you want to support me or not.
Yeah.
And they have been great. Once we got a few things worked out, they have been great. And the book has been out since October. And the response, they thought that people were going to come up to them and say, you scumbag, how could you do that to your mother? It's been completely opposite. People come up, give them a hug, and tell them how proud they are of them and how, they hope they keep doing good and what great kids they are. and so it's been really interesting.
Yeah, that would be very interesting. Well, it's the journey, right?
Yeah. Yep.
You went through this journey and had 4 probably just because God did want you to write this book, right?
Yep. Yep.
Because there could be something inside this book here, Michelle, that someone who is struggling, whether they're on the other side or not, that may
Yeah.
be that aha moment, right? That
Yep.
may change their life. And we say this on the show a lot. All it takes is one.
Yep.
If this book changes one life,
Yep.
the
Yep.
ripple effect that you will never ever see probably gets pretty big.
Yeah. Well, and when I did Panic, I know I touched a lot of lives with it. Panic stands for People Against Narcotics in the Community. So, and then I taught at the Utah County Jail. I got asked to go down every Sunday and teach the sisters. Now they have LDS. I'm from the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. That's my religion.
Okay.
And but there's others in the jail you can choose. You can go to different, kind face, yeah. And so I'd go down every Sunday and I'd teach anywhere between 5 and 30 women in the county jail. And I would teach them about prayer and teach them about forgiveness and the atonement. And they would always say, "We've done so much wrong, we will never be forgiven." That's not true. That is not true. And so it was really awesome, the amount of sisters that I was able to touch um, with my experiences there. And then I got to go up to the prison and do a program called Story Time. And we had the male inmates come in and sit across the table from us. They'd go around and pick out 3 or 4 books, and then they'd come and sit down with me. And I would record them, and they would talk to their child at home, and then read a story to them. And they'd always start by, "Hey, son, dad loves you. I hope you're helping mom," and, just heart wrenching. And then they'd read the story. And at the end, the inmate would say, "Dad loves you. I'll be home soon." And it was the most amazing. And so everybody says, "Well, were you scared of him?" And I said, "Never one time was I one bit scared. In fact, I wanted to hug him, but that was against the rule." And so I've had lots of opportunities to share my experience and hopefully help somebody just have faith that it can be done. It's going to be hard and it is gut wrenching, but it can be done.
No, it can be, right? And a lot of my guests who have battled the addiction that have come on the show, they've said that many times.
Yeah.
And I've heard them say, I don't know how many times, if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. Yep.
And some of these have been ones who have been unsheltered, or the big term is, I guess, is homeless,
Yep.
and lived on the streets for years.
Yep.
And some have left their kids behind, or some have
Yeah.
had kids taken away
Taken
from.
away.
And
Yeah.
now you see where their life's at today. They've got a wonderful job. They
Yep.
have a home. They have their kids back. They have family again, and their life is incredible. And
Yeah.
you've said it quite a few times throughout this show, Michelle, is it's the choice, right?
Yep.
Do you want the choice?
Yep.
And I said this to my ex-wife once. I'm like, you worked so hard to stay sober all this time, to get your grandkids back, to get me back, other family members back, to turn around and throw it all away again for that drink. You've lost your job, you've lost me, you've lost the grandkids.
Oh,
Like, what does it take for that
take.
ball to go
Yep.
off, right? And
Yeah.
again, I don't understand her battles. And I won't say that I do, because I don't. I
You
don't know
don't.
what's
Yep.
going on inside her, because I do know it's not the alcohol. That's the problem. That's just what she's
That's the,
using to not
that's the,
feel
yep.
whatever it is that she doesn't want to feel.
Yep. Yep. That's the masking.
However, again, I think that's where it's hard for us to go, what does it take for you to open
Yeah.
your eyes and realize you keep causing this chaos in your life when you've actually had everything, right?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have what we all strive for. I mean, I've not really been that big of a family guy years ago, right? Family get-togethers and stuff, and this was, 20, 30 years ago. It's like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
To spend time now with my daughters and my grandkids, And I went and had dinner with my aunt and uncle yesterday, with my mom, my sister, and my brother. Whew, I cherish those times.
It means everything.
Means
Yeah.
everything because that's love, man. That's what life is about, to have these people surrounding you, and we didn't talk about bad things. You know, we brought up some old stories as we were kids, or we brought up what some of my cousins have done, or
Uh-huh.
to want to throw that all away and give it all up for something that may promise you the world, but it doesn't follow through with any damn promise except
No, no, no. All you're going to get is misery. And I can't say that I understand addiction because I don't. I don't. I'm addicted to Pepsi and, there's certain things that I like, but I never will understand addiction
no.
fully.
Yeah.
But when you see how good life can be, why would you take that next drink or that next drug? Because you know where it's going to lead. One time, a couple of years ago, my son that's in drug court right now, he took off and we couldn't find him for days. And we found him down to, after my son called all the hospitals and all the jails, found him down to Fillmore. And so my sons jumped in their vehicles and ran to Fillmore and looked for hours for him. And everybody had seen him, but nobody knew where he was. And we just kept thinking, what if his vehicle got a flat tire and got impounded? So we knew he's on foot. We thought, what if he jumps in with the truck driver and takes off and we never see him again? So after hours and hours of searching for him in Fillmore and the police helping him, they just had a feeling to go back to the police station. So they went back and he was asleep underneath the chair in the police station. And my sons go over there, and my oldest, he reaches down with tears streaming out of his eyes and says, "Come on, bro, let's go home." And they get him out from underneath the chair, and the police officer says, "Are you guys his friends?" And they said, "No, we're all his brothers. And we have a mom at home that loves him so much, and a little sister that loves him to pieces. And we just want to get him home." And that police officer was in shock that he would have that kind of a support system. So we've always had that kind of support system, but it didn't ever stop the addiction.
Yeah.
It didn't matter how much we loved him. It didn't stop it. He come home, my kids brought him home, and he had hit his keys, and he got his keys next morning and took off again. So, but it is just so heart-wrenching. It really is.
Well, even with an amazing support system,
No,
it's
no, that doesn't,
yeah, it
no,
doesn't do
no,
it. It really
no.
doesn't.
And so as we started on our way, me and my husband finally decided to separate, and then we divorced in 2005. And I knew it was hard on the kids, it was hard on me, it was hard on him, but we knew it was probably the best to not have the contention in the home. And he didn't really want to be there anyway. He struggled with it. So in 2008, he passed away, and that was that's another chapter in the book, what that did for my kids. But the miracle about it all, he was alive at 6 o'clock in the hospital and died at 6:20. They couldn't bring him back. He was just gone. But all my kids were clean enough to attend the funeral. They were all clean enough to speak at the funeral, and it was amazing. It was a day that I pray my kids never ever forget. But then me picking up pieces, not only were we divorced and I was doing it alone, then he passed away. So then I was really alone. And so it was hard on all of us, but it's a beautiful chapter because it shows my kids' love for him.
Yeah.
And it's just, you know, we loved him. We loved him, but it didn't change the addiction.
Yeah. And I want to correct something, when I said that support doesn't change anything. And I do want to change because it does when they are ready.
When they're ready. Yep.
When they're ready. I'm
Yep.
what I meant by that is when they're not ready, it doesn't matter what kind of support you give them.
Yep. No,
They, and I am a firm believer too that when they say they want help, they really do want help,
I
right?
believe they do.
I do believe that. For a long time, I didn't believe that myself. I was like, "You're full of BS. You
Yeah.
don't help." I am a firm believer, but yes, the ones that do want to change, they have to have that support system. Our show that we did this morning talked a lot about connection. And they say in the recovery community, the opposite of addiction is connection. And when
Connection.
you
Yep.
have the right connection and the right tools in your tool belt,
Yeah.
whatever works for that individual, right? I may
Yep.
have a hammer in my tool belt. Well, maybe someone else needs a saw.
Yep.
Whatever works for them.
Yes. And
So
my
yeah,
son that's just getting out of drug court, he said, Mom, the 4 days a week I've been going to Provo to classes isn't to learn about drugs. It's to learn behaviors, and it's all the things that makes me tick the way I do. That's what we learn in drug court. It's not, no, what can you do to get off the drugs? That's going to come, but it's how you function and what tools you need in your tool belt. But it's behaviors, it's action, it's committing yourself to getting help. It's love. And if there's one thing I've learned is you have to love unconditional. There, I love my kids unconditionally. I might hate what they do, but I love them unconditionally. But really quick, you said something and about others, listening to this, and um, I'd help my kids for all those years and just give to them and give to them and tried to help them. I enabled them a lot of times, but I decided I needed to be on my own. I'd never lived alone, and since 1980. And so I moved to Salem, and I just wanted a fresh start. I didn't want any kids living with me. I was tired of the drama, and I just needed some me time. So I'm helping the boys pack my stuff downstairs, and I had a box of plates with their picture handprints on them from preschool, and I had my mom's china, and I'd pack this around every move I made, and I wanted to keep this box safe. So I carried it down the stairs. I'm about on the fifth stair. My heel catches on the stair, and I fall down. The box goes to the bottom of the stairs, shatters in a million pieces, and I'm sitting on the stair knowing that I've hurt my ankle bad. And I'm just looking at thinking, that is how my life feels, like it's just shattered in a million pieces. I can't fix that. So long story short, I go to the hospital, and yes, I've got my ankles really screwed up, and I had to go home and I sit and take pain pills, and nobody came to visit me for 3 days. I laid in a bed with not a box unpacked. I had no radio, no TV, and I was literally going crazy. My kids would call, and I'd say, I need you to come over. I need you to come and hook up my TV, and they wouldn't come. And I thought, all I've done for you, and you can't do this for me. After 3 days, Satan convinced me that I wasn't worth living. Nobody needed me. I might as well get out of the way and take my life and be done, because nobody was ever going to miss me. So I got out of bed, took a handful of pills, enough that I knew would take my life. And luckily my landlord walked in just as I was ready to take them, swallow them. And I spit them into her hand and got in the car and went to the psych ward. I was there 8 days. It was the best 8 days of my life. And when I just got married 6 years ago, and my husband said, I don't think you should put that in the book. That, are you sure you want to be that vulnerable? And I said, more people will be able to relate to me hitting the wall. I could not do any more. Satan had taken over my life. And more people will be able to relate to me wanting to take my life than they will the addiction. And I put it in the book, and I'll tell you, it's about as raw as anything. And I'm not embarrassed. One of my sons came and says, get out of bed. This looks worse than a jail cell. And I said, if you can't support me, go home, and I'll see you when I get out of here. But in that 8 days, I learned what to do for me. I learned that I needed me time. And it was the best 8 days of my life.
yeah. And I'm glad, Michelle, that you put that in your book. And the reason why I've shared this in almost all my public speaking that I've done, and even on the show, 2019, I was coming home from a networking event, and I had made my mind up that I was going to go home and get my pistol and go up in the mountains, and I was going to take my life because I could not handle coming home to what I was coming home to every day. And I'm so grateful that I don't I'll never know how far that would have went, because I got a
Mm-hmm.
phone call. And when I hung up, I saw the picture of my 2 daughters and 3 grandkids on my screensaver, and I remember just breaking down bawling, and I pulled off the
Oh,
road, and I was crying so hard I couldn't see the road, and I don't know how long I sat there on the side of the road crying, and finally, I'm like, "This is BS. This is bull crap.
yeah.
I cannot do right? I cannot do this," and I think that was Satan telling me, right, that, "Yeah, just done, because nothing's
Yep.
gonna change," and, when I got home, it was the same crap. She was
Mhm.
drunk as could be. I mean, the war started, the landmines were going off, things were being thrown, things was being said. I ended up calling the cops. They ended up arresting her.
Oh.
That was kinda like my start on my journey, right?
Mhm.
I was able to get out of my lease. I had 2 months left. I was able to get out of my lease because I did not want to be there anymore.
Yeah. Yeah.
I found another place to live, and it gave me some time, and of course, a good friend helped me with that. I had a friend who worked for the West Jordan Police Station at the time and has helped. She started a program called Peer Support Program to help our first
Oh.
responders with suicide and things like that,
Uh-huh.
and I gave her a call, and she's the one that basically said, "You gotta get yourself out of this situation.
Yeah.
Won't change until you do," and
Yep.
once I did that, that really helped. That was really the beginning of my healing, and
Mhm.
it's taken still all this time, because, I mean, my pain didn't happen overnight. It took years, right, to
Years. Yep.
now it's gonna take that time to get out. However, where I'm at today, 4 years later, is so much better than where I was at even a year ago,
Yeah.
you know,
Yep.
and I think it's the journey, and for us to use our voice, right? You talked about your husband that you have now said maybe you should not put that in there, and I love your vulnerability on that because I kept my ex-wife's addiction from my friends and family for years. I sat down and had coffee with a friend and I finally opened up, and he's the one that convinced me that I needed to start talking about it. And when I
Oh, wow.
why, he goes, "Because there are people going through exactly what you're going
What
through."
you're going through. Yep.
And see, we think what we're going through now, for you, it is probably because you have 4 kids going through it, right? But we all think that we're the only ones going through it, and that's not.
Oh, yeah.
There's
Yep.
so
Yep.
many other people out there that are going through it, and when we go through what we can go through and get to the point where we're at today, we're now somebody's hand, right? Just like a sponsor is there for someone who's in recovery to help
Uh-huh.
in that journey. Now, you, myself, and so many others are also that hand to help people through their journey, even though
Yep.
it may be the same, it may not be, right?
Yep. Yep. Well, and so many people say, I'm your friend. Why didn't you? Well, it had nothing to do with friends. I have a million friends. I have family. I have so many people I could have called and said, "Hey, I'm going to take my life. Would you come over or help me, whatever?" But at the time, I didn't think I had a friend in the world. I thought nobody needed me. And when a mother doesn't need, I want to be needed. And when you don't feel like anybody needs you, it's just wasn't a good feeling for me. It was, but anyway, it's been, people say it's their favorite chapter just because it is so raw and it is so real. And I was very, very honest. And so, yeah, it's been, and then, I went all these years, I went 15 years single and dated 100 men, and nobody ever came along that was right. And then I always knew that sooner or later I was going to have to tell them, and by the way, you take me, you take my 6 children. 4 of them are recovering drug addicts. It might, and I just could never get close to anybody. And then I got introduced to my husband, who we were friends 50 years ago. So we knew each other, but we don't remember. Our moms were best friends, and he moved away. So married him 6 years ago, and he knows nothing about addiction, but he has been such a great support to me. And he's the one that really made me keep going on the book. There were times that I would be writing a chapter and I'd be crying so hard I couldn't even see the words. And I'd put it away, and 2 weeks later I'd open it up again and I'd cry all over again. And he just kept telling me, "You can do it. You can do it. Let's get it on paper." And since my book came out October 25th, it has been so healing. Are my kids better? Some of them are better, but every day they have to wake up and want to be clean one more day.
Yeah.
But it's been closure. It has been really, really healing for me to be able to know that I can pick it up and read it now, and I'm going to shed tears, but I'm not going to sob like I sobbed when I was writing it.
Yeah. Well, and again, this is just how I'm viewing it. While you were writing it, those triggers were popping up left and right
Yep.
like crazy, right? It's if
Yep.
you're reliving all that pain over and over.
Yep.
However, once you get it out, now the healing process
Yep.
gets to begin. And
Gets to
and
be.
of
Yep.
course, the tears are probably always going to flow, but like
Yeah.
you said,
Yeah.
it's not as strong as they used to be.
Yeah. Well, and then kids worried about what the response was going to be like. What were people going to think when they seen him? And it has just been every bit of it has been positive. It's just been unbelievable. But would I ever want to go through it again? I I often tell people I'd go through it all again to have what I have today. Now, our life's not perfect and they still struggle, but I'd do it all over again if to have what I have now.
Wow. So it also sounds like to me, Michelle, that your faith has really also helped you get through this a lot.
Yes, it has. And and I found out that, I found out a lot about writing a book once you write a book. To put it in Deseret book, it would be a religious book, but then that would be the only place I could put it. And I didn't want it just in Deseret book. Deseret book's kind of an LDS bookstore,
Hmm.
but I wanted it to be everywhere. But I wanted people who are my religion or any religion be able to read it. So it's definitely got my testimony in it. My Savior has walked with me every step of the way. I could not have done it. In fact, I look at the book now and I think, how did that get written? There's chapters I don't even remember writing. And I know that it was because of my Savior that knew he came to me in church and said, you need to write a book. And I looked around like, who's talking to me? And I got on it, and he promised me that if I wrote the book, the rest would be, he'd take care of the rest. This book will get into the hands of those who need it because I followed the prompting. I took the challenge and I did it, and he will pick up the rest. So yes, it's got my testimony in it. I couldn't have done it without my bishop and my stake president and all those who are active in our church. I couldn't have done it without them. But it's not just a LDS book. It's for anybody.
Yeah. Well, and you said something earlier too about the type of home your kids grew up in,
Mm-hmm.
right? And a lot of our listeners who listen to the show a lot, they already know this. And for those who maybe listen for the first time, addiction, especially if you're on the other side, addiction doesn't discriminate. You know,
Oh.
because I've had guests on my show who went on LDS missions and
Mm-hmm.
came home and fell into addiction. I've had others who grew up in gangs and then ended up going on a mission.
Yep. Yep.
So it doesn't, and they come from all backgrounds. It
Yes.
doesn't matter. Some have come from wealthy families, some not so wealthy, some from middle class. It really doesn't matter. And
No.
what I have found out in almost the 3 years doing this show is I don't think there has been one out of 230 something episodes where one person says that I did it by myself.
Mm-hmm.
They all have said, I did it with the strength of a higher power, whatever that
Yes.
higher power is for
Yep.
that individual, right?
Yep.
I'm not here to judge how they look at it, because if it works for them, that's all that flipping matters.
Yep. Yep.
We all need that. I think it goes back to that connection again, right? If we have
Yep.
connection with our higher power,
Power. Yep.
help us get through what we need to get through. And I come from an LDS family as well, and I'm not active at all.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very spiritual, and I don't know how many times God or Jesus has carried me through some of the most toughest crap, because
Yep.
believe me, there has still been thoughts before where I'm like, I'm done
Yeah.
with this. I just don't want to do this anymore. I'm tired of the battle. I'm tired of the fight. Why cannot life start smoothing out for me? Right.
Yeah. Yep.
And I go back after these times have passed, and I'm like, how did I get through that? How did I literally get through that? And I've got through it without even being dirty. And the way I see it is I've been being carried this whole
Oh,
flipping.
yes. Yep. Yeah, me too. That poem about the footsteps, and there was only one set of footsteps, and it was
Yeah,
because he
yeah,
was
because I
carrying
was
us.
carrying you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Footsteps.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got to have a higher power. And like I said, it can be whatever you choose your higher power to be.
Yeah.
But you need to rely on someone, and someone knows the bigger picture better than we do. And yeah, it's been a roller coaster ride, that's for sure.
Yeah. It sounds like it. My gosh. So, where can people find your book? Are you on Amazon and
Yes.
the
Yep.
other?
I'm on Amazon. Uh-huh. And then I have them at my house, so I can, if people want a signed copy, I
Okay.
have them. And then first of the year, we're gonna get it into some other places. But when I got it published, it just started selling, and I have just been overwhelmed with people buying it. So the first of the year after Christmas, then I want to get busy and get doing the uh, marketing and get it out there, because everybody that's read it, the only thing I've ever got from them is very positive. They love it. They are so encouraged to know that they can do it. But I'm really lucky that I haven't lost a child.
Yeah.
That's really the miracle in all this. And I know we're not done yet, but to have that many addicts and not lost a child is a complete miracle. What a blessing, because that was not one of the things that I ever thought I could handle.
Yeah. Well, you've handled a lot with 4 out of 6. My God.
Yes, I have.
No, and while we're on the subject of books, I just want to throw my good friend book, Mallory Rouge. So Mallory is my lovely friend down in St. George.
Oh,
And she was a guest on my show the first year that I had it. She drove all the way up from St. George to come. I had a studio at the time, and I've kind of adopted her as one of my daughters. She's like the same age as my daughters, and she's got an
oh,
incredible story. And she wrote a book, Inspired to Recover. And I tell
oh,
you what, if you can find that, I
oh,
highly
I'll have to read
suggest
it.
you read it because she's very, very vulnerable and raw in hers as well. And it's just an excellent book. She took a long time to write it, and now she's doing her best to get it out there.
Oh, that is
So
awesome.
check it out. If you're a reader, Inspired
Okay,
to Recover,
okay,
of her book. It's
okay.
guys, yeah, I would highly suggest too to get Michelle's book and check it out. I'm getting excited to the point to where I can start reading it.
Start reading it.
Crazy how many guests I've had that have sent me books. I've never really been a reader, and I'm a very slow reader. I
Yeah.
so many books to read. There for a while, I was doing really, really well, and I was doing at least a chapter a night in a book, and then I'd finish it and start another one, and then it got to where it was a half a chapter. Then it got to where it was like 2 pages, and
Yeah.
it's like nothing. However, I got to add that back into my schedule because it really does help, and
Oh,
to
yes.
read other
Yeah.
people's stories. It's
Well, and everybody that has read it says the same thing. I could not put that book down. I had one son that went to prison, and luckily I had kept his prison letters that he had sent me, and so I was able to put actual letters from him. Because to go back now and remember what it was like and all that for him, he may not have remembered all that, but I had all the letters. So I actually put the letters in the book that explain what it was like up at the state prison up in Salt Lake. And he got counted out down to Beaver, spent 9 months in prison, loved it. And nobody loves prison. So it's just the whole thing has been so crazy, because he said it was the best 9 months of his life. He loved down to Beaver, and it was a great program. And so anyway, yeah, it's it's just a quick read, and it's just one that will make you happy because you can see that it can be done. And it may not even be your child. It may be your neighbor, maybe your uncle, maybe addiction to food or gambling or pornography, or it's all the same. Addiction's addiction.
oh
It
yeah,
just,
yeah.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The brain functions the exact same way no matter what it is.
Oh, yes. Yep. Yep.
Yeah,
Do you
and
have any questions on my book, or do you have any questions?
no, I don't. It's just that I'm excited to get reading it because I've gone through a little bit of the back of it, right?
Uh-huh.
And I'm definitely excited to go through it because again, to speak with someone who's been on the other side like yourself, I believe this book is going to touch a lot of spots in my life, right? Even
Uh-huh.
though it's not a child that I had, it was a spouse.
Yep.
So I'm definitely looking forward to going through, and I love how you said through a mother's eyes times four, because I think that's really catchy. Well, what do they
Yeah.
mean by that? Yeah,
Yeah.
when
Yep.
you
What
talk
does
about
times
how,
four mean?
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And again, thank you so much for sending me a book. She was nice
Oh,
enough to
you're
send me the book, and uh,
Hey, you are so welcome.
something very sweet in there. And
Oh, special sent you a little special message.
I know, right? Yeah.
I
So
am so glad though that I got to finally get on air with you. And I've been so nervous, but it's just as easy as what I did years ago.
yeah. Well, and we spoke about that, right, the other night. I told you we're just gonna sit down and have a
Yeah.
conversation,
Yep.
and it's good that you're not in the studio because a lot of times people would come in the studio and we had three cameras up and we had the
Uh,
switchboards and the TV and
Yeah.
the lights, and people would get a little nervous with it, especially when we told them that one's your camera.
Uh-huh. Makes you a
Yeah,
little bit paranoid.
yeah,
Uh,
it's people it just takes a very short time and they get relaxed when they just
yeah.
realize, that
Well, when it's something that you're passionate about, and and I'm really proud of what I've done. I don't know how I did it, but I did it, and I'm really proud of it. And earlier you said one day you'll know the people that you've touched. I believe when I get to heaven, if I make it there, I will meet many, 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 many people that I've touched either at the jail or Panic or my book or something. So I'm excited for that day to where I can see that yes, I did help others. And
yeah,
that's really what we're here for, is to help others and share our thoughts and our challenges, our trials. Trials make us who we are, and I am a much better person because of what I've gone through with my kids, and it's made my testimony stronger and to be able to talk in front of people. So yes, trials do make us the person we are.
absolutely. And you will. Here I'm pretty sure very soon, Michelle, you will start having more people coming up and approaching you and going, "I read your book.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much."
Yep.
And yeah, it'll start coming because again, my producer told me that, and I told him he was full of crap,
Uh-huh.
and it happens, and it makes you feel so good that you've changed someone's life or you help
Yep.
open their eyes in a way, and in all reality, they're helping me, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're educating me, they're helping me in my journey.
Yep.
And because again, as I told you and I tell every guest, this is your show. It's not mine. This is just a platform. I just provide a platform, and it's for
Uh-huh.
you to share whatever it is you want to share. And I used to do my shows on Thursday, and we used to call it Therapy Thursday
Oh,
because that was my therapy, right? To
yeah.
have people like yourself and other people on the show because I get educated. I get to learn a lot. I get to learn some new verbiage. Sometimes I get off shows and something that's one of my guests said just keeps pounding in my head, and I really start putting some deep thought into it and go, you know
Uh-huh.
what? I love how they look at this, and I think this is what I would like to do. And
Yeah.
so we're all here to help one another.
Uh-huh.
That's why
Yep.
we're using our voice, right?
Yep. Yep. That
Yeah.
is so true.
So two last questions here before we
Okay.
sign. We've been going over an hour already. What would you want our listeners to gain from this show? And also, what would be your main message?
Okay. If you're going through it, if you have a loved one that is struggling, or a neighbor, a friend, or whoever, don't give up. Just keep going. Um, get on your hands and knees and pray, because with God anything's possible. When those little sisters would be in the jail and had no faith, no hope, no nothing, they'd pull out their scriptures and they'd get on their knees. And that is what we all need to do. We need to help each other. And the people that, and I run into them all the time that, wow, my kids would never do that, or my kid better never do that. And I always say, don't say what your kids are going to do, because you have no idea. When they're those cute little babies and you're loving them and rocking them and kissing them and hugging them, you don't know what they're going to, you don't know what they're going to be like when they're teenagers, when they're adults. And so just love them, and everything you can read about or classes you can go to. Uh, I go to a lot. I used to go to a lot of the LDS 12-step programs, and I'd go and not my sons. And I always thought, now what am I doing sitting here, but not them? But I learned so much, and it helped me really grasp the whole meaning of what it's like to raise your child. And it does, it takes a village, and we just need to help each other.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, if they want to get my book, it's got all kinds of stories of what we've been through, and some of them end happy, some of them end sad. But in the end of the day, we love each other. My kids love each other a lot. They love each other more than anything in the whole world. They miss their dad. That was a really, really sad thing when he passed. But he's been gone 15 years, and we're all doing good. And you just have to have hope that things are going to get better. Take lemons and make lemonades. And the other day, somebody wrote me a message and said, you took a mess and made a message. And I thought, that is so true. My life was a mess, but I put it all together and I made a message. And that's what I want. I just want to help people and let everyone know that there is hope. Never, ever, ever give up.
I love it. I love it. Great message. And with you saying take lemons and make lemonade, I need to connect you with my lovely friend Heidi, because she does a podcast, Taking Lemons and Turning It into Lemonade.
Oh, I'd love it.
She is a wonderful, wonderful woman. I'm so blessed to have her in my life. She's awesome. So I'm gonna have to I'll reach out to her on Messenger, and with
Okay.
permission to pass
Okay.
your contact info.
Oh, perfect.
Do that. I think you'll fall in love with Heidi just like I did. She's just an amazing lady.
Yeah. Oh, I
Yeah,
would love that.
yeah,
You take what you get, but you have to make the best of it. So,
exactly.
and there's one quote in my book, and I remember when I first heard it, I'd never heard it before. I didn't cause it, I can't control it, and I can't cure it. And if you really go into life knowing those, because I didn't cause this, and I surely can't control it, my kids, they're adults, and I can't cure it. They have to be willing to do it. I can help. I can be by their side, but they have to do it. They have to want to do it.
Exactly. Exactly. My gosh, Michelle, thank you so much for taking time out of
You are so welcome. You are such a sweetheart. I'm so glad that I got to be on your podcast. I've
well,
never been on a podcast before, so this is all new.
that's the first time, and then hopefully we can get you on Heidi's, and
Oh,
always looking for guests, because a lot of us that do shows, we do pick other guests from other shows, right? Because
yeah,
their information, or we'll reach out and go, hey, I'd love to have them.
yeah,
And it's always cool because different information comes out and
yeah,
gives ourselves again a chance to use a voice or share our voice and help others. So
yeah.
thank you so much. And
Oh, you are so welcome.
absolutely. And Whitney, thank you for introducing us. I'm so grateful to you.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
I love Whitney. She's a
yeah,
sweetheart.
love and miss you. You said her dad used to call her Feather, so
Feather. Yep. She
Feather.
is known as Feather. My kids or anybody in Spanish Fork will know her as Feather.
Awesome. I love it. Well,
Oh,
Michelle, stay on as we sign off. It's
okay.
just for a second here before we end this. But guys, again, thank you. Thank you to all our guests, all our sponsors, all our listeners. As I say every week, guys, we couldn't do this without you. Please continue to like and subscribe, share our shows, and please continue to listen, because somebody may just need to hear this message. Remember this: addiction is giving up everything for one thing, and recovery is giving up one thing for everything. We're out.